Where do exceptional talents come from? There are those who believe that talents are present from birth, as some individuals are associated with natural skills that no one else can achieve. On the other hand, there are those who believe that talent can be acquired through continuous effort and training. Simply put, are talents born with humans? Or is it the result of sustainable learning and development? Maybe it's both, we'll find out later. Which team do you lean towards, my friend? The important thing is, to answer this question, and after years of research and traveling to different parts of the world, to study the outstanding in different fields, Daniel Coyle wrote the book The Talent Code. From the title, we note that he tried to demystify the issue of talent. In some contexts, the word code can be associated with puzzles or secrets, such as the novel The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, where a person must crack the code or puzzle to understand the true meaning of the word. Did he succeed in that? I mean, did he decode talent, remove the mystery from it, and answer the most important question, are talents born with humans? Or is it the result of sustainable learning and development? This is what we will learn in today's summary of the book The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. If you want to know things that may be new to you, such as what is myelin, what is its importance, and what is its relationship to talent, stay with us. Let us first know what myelin is, and we will do this in the simplest possible way. The transmission of information in nerve cells includes generating an electrical signal and transmitting it across nerve fibers, and then receiving it inside the target cell, which enables these nerve cells to respond to stimuli and perform multiple functions in the body, such as movement. The speed of response and reaction depends on the speed and efficiency of the transmission of information and commands between nerve cells via nerve fibers. If these nerve fibers have leaks, the accuracy and speed of the transmission of information between nerve cells will decrease. This is where myelin comes into play. Myelin acts as an insulator on nerve fibers or pathways between cells. It is a protective layer made of fat and protein, like insulating materials around an electrical wire. It prevents the leakage of electrical signals from the pathways between nerve cells, and increases the speed and strength of these signals during their transmission. When there is more myelin in a particular nerve pathway, that pathway can execute commands more efficiently and quickly than pathways with less myelin. The important part is coming. When you repeatedly activate a neural pathway by doing a certain action over and over again, such as you repeating a certain hand movement in a sport, in order to master that movement, you send a signal to your brain that these neural pathways in the brain, which are involved in this movement, is an important path. The brain responds to this signal by increasing the amount of myelin surrounding the neural paths related to this movement. Simply put, the more you practice this movement regularly and for long periods, the more myelin will be built around the neural paths for its implementation, which increases your speed and effectiveness during its implementation. According to Coyle, what people consider talent is simply ease of execution, which consists of making the neural pathways in the brain responsible for a particular skill as efficient as possible through the growth of myelin. He says that an efficient, highly myelinated neural circuit manifests itself as talent through two things. First, myelin increases the speed of neural transmission, which is the time the body needs to perform a specific action based on receiving the signal from the brain. By preventing leaks along the neural pathways, these electrical signals can travel faster and more efficiently, which increases the speed of reactions and communication between brain and muscles. For example, a boxer who has a greater neural transmission speed can quickly estimate where his opponent's punch will land and can quickly avoid it. This can give him a competitive advantage in the ring, as he can make decisions and act more quickly than his opponent. Second, myelin creates and enhances automaticity. Once a neural circuit becomes myelinated, the movement associated with it becomes easy or automatic. That is, you do not need to focus on it to the same degree as you would with a completely new skill. When you watch someone perform a skill brilliantly, you find that their movements appear natural and simple, and their actions appear easy because of the existence of a process called neural automatism. where a highly myelinated neural circuit sends signals and commands to carry out these movements without the person having the need to think while performing them, without intervention and process. Conscious thinking of it. However, the question is, how can this degree of automation or ease of implementation be achieved? The answer is simple: repeatedly activate the neural circuits for this skill to form and strengthen myelin. But here is a small, or perhaps a big, problem. To build myelin, this repetition must be challenging. Coyle calls this difficult repetition deep practice, or deep training. So what is deep practice? According to the author, deep practice is intense, targeted practice for a skill that is on the edge of your abilities, should be achievable, but pushes you slightly beyond the limits of your current skill set. As I'll explain, you shouldn't just be repeating a skill you know how to do well, it should be challenging enough to push you outside your comfort zone and current skill level, which is what Coyle calls the development zone. It is when it is between a skill that you know well and a skill that you want to achieve or reach, that is, developing a relatively new skill for you, a specific skill that you are able to develop on the one hand, but it requires you to make additional effort and intense focus to achieve progress. You must face the challenge and work hard. To improve your skills at this stage in the development area, you will repeatedly make mistakes and then try to correct them. Suffering and making mistakes when learning signals to your brain that your current neural connections that control the skill are suboptimal, so the brain responds by strengthening these connections, by strengthening myelin. So deep practice is basically repetition? No. It's more than just repetition because it challenges homeostasis, the level of tension or effort your body is used to. Let me give you an example to illustrate. To make progress in running or lifting weights, you need to exercise and stimulate your muscles and cardiovascular system until your body reaches a point where it cannot maintain balance. Once this happens, your body adapts to reach balance at a new level. It changes in ways that enable you to run longer distances or lift more weight. The same principle applies to the human brain. The more you push yourself, the more the structure and chemistry of your brain will adapt to meet new challenges. However, you should not put too much pressure on yourself, as this will only lead to exhaustion, and perhaps stopping completely. By trying, you must force yourself to get out of your comfort zone a little and enter the development zone. You can start implementing noticeable structural changes that contribute to improving your performance and developing your skills. Now that I know the importance of deep practice, how do I apply it? Well, Coyle offers 4 ways or steps to do this. First, segmentation. Breaking large information into smaller, manageable pieces, understanding each of those smaller pieces, and rebuilding them back in the original sequence. The segmentation process consists of 3 steps. Step 1. Create a mental model of what you are trying to achieve. If you want to master a sports movement, for example, watch a professional perform the movement from beginning to end, and focus on the details of the movement and performance. Step 2. Break down the required skill into its individual components. Identify the individual key elements of the skill, then practice each element individually. Let's say you want to learn a new skill in basketball, such as the three-point shot. Divide it into its component elements: the position of the feet, the position of the hands, and the correct angle for the shot, then maneuver and execute. Learn each element separately and master it, then combine them all to master the three-point shot. Step 3. Decrease speed. Repeating a desired skill slowly will increase your accuracy, Coyle says, because it allows you to pay greater attention to mistakes and understand the subtleties of how all the elements fit together. The second method of deep practice: staying alert to defects while practicing the skill. You must remain aware of the difference between your current level and the level you aspire to reach, so that you can identify errors as they occur, and when you notice an error, stop, and compare this error with the ideal level of the skill, to determine what you need to improve it, then repeat the section over and over again until you perform it without making any mistakes. This repetition of the difficult section leads to building myelin associated with the skill until you reach automaticity in performance. Compare this error with the ideal level of the skill, to determine what you need to improve, then repeat the part over and over again until you perform it without making any mistakes. This repetition of the difficult section leads to building myelin associated with the skill until you reach automaticity in performance. The third method of deep practice, intensification, by imposing restrictions on them to make them more difficult. These restrictions that you impose on yourself increase the effectiveness of developing your talent efficiently because they create many new challenges. When you apply skills with very difficult challenges in a competition, your performance will be better. Better, because the real-world application is less difficult than the intense practice you'd be doing. Soccer players in Brazil often start out playing futsal. Futsal, or futsal, is a difficult version of soccer that uses fewer players and a smaller pitch. And a heavier ball. This creates an intense environment that increases the number of times the player touches the ball, makes decisions, and corrects mistakes, and according to Coyle, this is one of the reasons why Brazil produces the best footballers in the world. Playing a regular game of football is easier than playing futsal. The fourth method of deep practice, commitment to repetition. Challenge alone is not enough, repetition is also very important. Remember, the more repetition you activate a particular circuit, the more myelin your brain will build around it. You start learning a skill, then you repeat it until you master it, then you increase the challenge by increasing the degree of difficulty, then you repeat it until you master it, then you increase the challenge by increasing the degree of difficulty, and so on until you reach automaticity. Psychologists who study outstanding performance note that the degree of mastery in any field is the result 10 years, or 10,000 hours, of committed practice, which is what Robert Greene espoused in the Book of Mastery. To learn more about this, I will leave you a link to the summary of the Book of Mastery by Robert Greene in the description box. As you have seen, deep practice requires time, patience, and great effort. What would motivate a person to commit to this difficult work for years, or even for the rest of his life? Coyle found that this level of commitment requires a special type of motivation called burning motivation, which he describes as the reason that inspires someone to make a long and hard commitment to building talent. Passion sparks the desire for achievement, and motivation fuels the hard work and perseverance necessary to achieve a long-term goal. Where does this motivation come from and how do I find it? Coyle answers you, this motivation does not suddenly appear out of nowhere, it grows from the signals you receive throughout your life, from your surroundings, from the people around you, or the culture in which you live, messages about what is your value or what is expected of you, and you pick up these signals and messages often unconsciously, and use them to know what you aspire to, and these signals and messages that you receive throughout your life constitute what Coyle calls the aspirational self, which produces two essential factors to spark the passion and motivation necessary to commit to years of deep practice. The first factor is the desire to belong to a high-achieving group, to become a person of value to your group and society, to join those who came before you who were distinguished, and the second factor is the belief that one day you can achieve this. Environments that arouse intense motivation and inspiration often produce people who achieve high successes, and this it sends a signal that, again, with hard work to develop your talent, someone like you can succeed, and this reinforces your belief in yourself. An example that illustrates both factors. If you are a footballer and you grew up in an environment that highly valued a couple of local players who achieved great success, you would likely have a desire to belong to this group, and because the stars were playing in the same local leagues as you learn that it can happen to you too, through hard work and commitment. Likewise, if you studied physics at a school that lauds its award-winning graduates, you'll be overwhelmed by the desire to join their ranks. This is the first factor in using impetus in a group, such as a school, a town, or a family. When one individual in a group, such as a town or community, develops an exceptional talent and achieves fame, it sends an important environmental signal to the entire community that someone like them or from their background can succeed. This sparks an enthusiastic drive within the community. Others show a desire to join in the belief that they can achieve success like he did. Coyle points out that during his research, in many cases he found one individual with exceptional talent who gained recognition, and 7 to 10 years later, many other talents from the same community followed suit. The biggest example of this can be found in the sport of squash in Egypt. After the excellence and success of Ahmed Barada in the 1990s, Egypt began producing many distinguished players who dominated this game and continue to achieve success until today. After Ranim El Wilali was a spectator of the final match and Ahmed Barada's legendary performance against the Pakistani player ranked number 1 in the world at the time, after 20 years she became number 1 in the world. Likewise, cooperation and competition in such environments as training centers, for example, exceptionally talented individuals are constantly exposed to each other's talents, and thus they cooperate and compete. In this type of environment, group members are pushed to prove that they belong to the distinguished, and are always exposed to the challenge, to confront the talents and abilities of their peers and competitors, and this pushes them to continuous repetition and development. In this upward spiral of efficiency, each opponent motivates the other to learn and grow, with each element positively benefiting the others. Having a fierce competitor may seem like an obstacle to your success, right? But it's actually a big part of what drives your growth. Development, in any skill, grows through competition. Without that, the skill will remain in a state of stagnation, and this is what Ronaldo and Messi always confirm, that competing with each other pushed them more to excel and shine. Now that you know the role that practice and motivation play in building individual and group talent, we will briefly mention how you can use this knowledge to train and develop the talent of others. Using 5 techniques mentioned by the writer. Technique 1: Motivational language. Excessive praise that refers to the individual himself, such as saying "you are the best," is not as effective as motivational comments that indicate hard work, effort, or perseverance, such as "good job" or "your work is really paying off." This type of language motivates, it encourages the individual to practice and challenge themselves, because it encourages them not to give up, and to continue working hard even when they face difficult challenges. This approach helps them understand that talent is not something that is inherited from birth only, but can be built through effort and appropriate training. The second technique, the attractive personality. Coyle found that trainers who use attractive personalities during training are able to communicate more. Their dramatic performance engages the trainee and makes him more interested in learning. Coyle says this technique is especially effective when the trainer has to provide honest, serious feedback. The trainee is already engaged in the fun presentation, making the criticism part of the playful drama and easier for them to receive. Technique 3: Communicate information accurately and concisely. Give firm advice in short, direct sentences when necessary, for example, "speed up, shoot now, more vibration." This type of brief communication allows the coach to provide large amounts of feedback in a short period of time, condensing as much skill building as possible into a single coaching session. It is also effective because these directions during training allow the student to notice his mistakes and correct them immediately. Technique 4: Skill-tailored training. Good coaches are able to identify the abilities their students need to unleash and can design lessons, training sessions, or teaching methods that will release the right abilities to get their students into the development zone necessary for the skill they are focusing on. Fifth technique: Personal guidance. An excellent trainer thinks about the best way to adapt his guidance to the needs of each trainee. He is able to determine the trainee's current skills, identify the skills that need improvement, and find the most effective way to report his mistakes and correct them. He also works to find the burning motivation that will push trainee for deep training over the years, by working to determine the best way to attract each trainee to love the learning process. In the end, my friend, I think that talent in the end, after decoding it from the writer Daniel Coyle, is perhaps both things together. It is born and developed. 23:59. Talent may be born with a person, but it may also be buried with him. A wise man was asked about the best place in which talent can be found, and he replied that cemeteries are the best place we can look for them. As we have seen, talent depends on the growth of myelin around our neural circuits, and to foster this growth you must practice to the extreme limits of your current abilities, so that you can make mistakes and correct them. Talent is formed when deep practice is encouraged by long-term burning motivation and reinforced through training. Use deep practice techniques in your chosen craft or skill. And identify who you want to become to establish long-term behavior and commitment. You were with the summary of the book The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle.